Okay, welcome to the April 2nd, 2024 meeting for the Board of Health. In accordance with the governor's order superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law 36, Section 20, regarding the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency. The meeting tonight will be, for the public meeting tonight will be held such on Zoom, such that Clinton's physically closed to the public, in accordance with the sorry, I lost my base, to avoid group congregation. Sorry about that. Okay. So gonna go right into the public hearings, Betsy? That's the
Yep,
that's the
7
plan.
o'clock.
Okay, so 7 p.m.-ish, hearing for 292 Main Street. And I have to read the preamble. The variance hearing from the Board of Health Regulations is called in order for 292 Main Street in Norfolk, Mass. It is my duty to inform you that you will have to provide the Board of Health with data to support your request for a waiver of Board of Health requirements, and that if you do not receive the waiver, it will do you manifest injustice. You will also have to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. Okay.
We have Eric Dickinson from Civilized Solutions on the line to present.
Okay. Eric, you have the floor. You're on mute, though.
Is that better?
Yeah. That is much
Okay.
better, Eric.
All right. Can I share my screen and show the plan?
Sure. Let me just make you
Okay.
a co-host so you can do that. Okay, you should be all set.
Okay. There we go. Everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this property is it's a 5-bedroom, 2-family property. It was in pretty bad shape. The new homeowners bought it in hopes of rehabilitating it, and which they've been doing until they got shut down, I think, just recently by the building department. But the existing septic system, it has a cesspool in the back going to a pit and an on-site well not more than 30 feet away from that cesspool and pit. There is water available a little further down the road to the west that feeds the property. I think it's the very end of that line would be to the property behind this one, which kind of runs along here, the driveway that accesses it. However, to connect to that water, I think I looked into it with the DPW. It was $40,000 to $50,000 or something like that.
Actually, I think the quote that they sent me was more upwards of $80,000.
Okay.
I think that the high end was 96,000.
Thank you.
All right, great. I get. So that being said, they want to keep the on-site well. So I did the testing in the front yard, trying to stay as far away as possible to that well. The first test pit by the road was a very good soil, which is consistent with this area. It was, of course, sand and gravel. The second test pit that was closer to the house was also pretty good material. But it did have very, very strong redox at about 32 inches. Which, that being said, I decided to go with an alternative, an IA system. This is a fast geoflow system. It requires biannual inspections. It's basically I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's a mini wastewater type treatment plant. I did not take any offsets to groundwater. It's 5 feet to groundwater. But it does come with a size reduction. The system will have a wall around it, right here, a Versalock wall, to maintain access and to the front door, the 2 doors of the property. The variances that I'm looking for is there's 51 feet from my proposed soil absorption system to the on-site well, which is not Title V compliant. And then the other variance is from the abutters well to the west. I'm 100.6 feet, which is Title V compliant, but it doesn't meet the local regulation of 125 foot, the 125 foot buffer. We are in the process of going through conservation now. It's been submitted. I don't know if we have a hearing date yet, but there is a wetland system to the west, and some of the work is, you can see this end of the system is within the 100-foot buffer. There will be a deed restriction required or a deed notice for this type of system. The house has to stay 5 bedrooms, or the duplex. It can't ever exceed 5 bedrooms. And it will run with the property if it was to transfer ownership. That's about all I have. I don't know if you guys have this, but this is the plan. The only thing that's different about the plan that I submitted, I just recently added this proposed addition. They got zoning board zoning board approval for that. And they are going to remove the, there's a garage back here, a dilapidated garage. That's the only 2 changes.
All right, does anybody from the board have any questions? Matt, if you would like to give your summary, I'll let you do the summary. I have one question, but I think you'll probably be answering it. So
Sure.
I'll let you do your.
So as Eric had said, the 2 requests, one is a state Title V request. Title V does not allow at all for anything under 50 feet, and they are maintaining just above that 50 feet at the 51.3 feet, and that is to the well that's on their property. And then of course the other request is from our local regulations, and that's due to the shorter perk rate that requires that further distance in relation to that depth of the groundwater. The system that is designed is allowed by DEP for just in general to be reduced for that groundwater separation from 5 feet to 2 feet, which is used on occasion. I've seen it on other occasions, just due to the enhanced nitrogen removal from that secondary treatment. So it's definitely a pretty elaborate system that is being proposed here between the microfast secondary treatment and the GeoFlow SAS. So as a result, again, of course, as standard with the GeoFlow, no garbage grinder can be installed, so that'll be have to be put on record. They'll also have to have the notification, as Eric had said, for the alternative systems. I will want to see a signed operation maintenance and O&M agreement to be on file for those biannual inspections that for the ongoing maintenance of the fast treatment system, to make sure that it is functioning properly and removing the nitrogen and everything's working properly. And then of course the deed restriction for the maximum of the 5 bedrooms to be filed with the Registry of Deeds. At no point would they ever be allowed to increase that bedroom count, just given the system and the variance requests. I don't think I had anything else. The lot is a tough site just with the location of the wells. I know I talked, I think, with Eric about possibly maybe trying to move the well that's on the subject's property. But given the other septic systems, you might gain, I think the most we were able to gain is maybe like 10 feet additionally beyond that 51.3. So that's really not a feasible request given the cost of drilling a new well. Certainly the cost of running a water line in, that's a extremely high cost. And again, that would only rectify one of the 2 variance requests, not both. So I don't have any issues with the way the plan was proposed or the system was designed. but it is a limiting property. So if you have any questions, I can try to answer them as well.
Thanks, man.
I just have a question in like how it relates to the homeowner at 294. Like are they aware of the variant? Like did they have to give any approval for the variance because it affects their well distance?
The abutters were notified.
Yeah.
If they had any concerns or questions, they can be heard at this meeting.
Okay.
And again, that the abutters well meets all the Title V requirements. There's no, per the state regulations, there's no issues with that. It's just our local regulations are a little more strict, which is why they're requesting that.
Okay. Okay, Eric, I just have one question.
Okay.
The physical well that's on the property,
Yeah.
do you know how it's constructed and where the seal is, or have you checked the integrity of the seal as part of the work, and how deep is the well? Any idea?
I did not. They were gonna have a well company come out there and take a look at it, but it was functioning. They do have water in the house, and so but yeah, you should receive a certification for that prior to a certificate of occupancy or anything, you know.
I don't think we had any records in the file relating to the
Okay.
well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, considering the age of the house, I wouldn't be surprised. It's yeah, I mean, just in my line of work with the current water conditions, I mean, both groundwater, surface water, and just the amount of rain we've had right now. I mean, I'm not saying we're getting to a perfect storm, but this is one of those things where, an extra foot of increase in the water table, would that affect the well? And that's why I'm interested where the seal is, or the integrity of the seal on the well. So,
Okay.
right. So, okay. That's the only question I had.
Okay.
So, okay. So, if there's no more discussions, any butters to the project here? We have an unnamed Zoom user who's driving, but I'm not sure if he's has
That's
anything to say, or if he's
the
good.
yeah, that's the owner of the property.
Okay. Okay.
I'm the owner of the property. I'm just driving because like a lot of traffic here on the train line, and the traffic center was crazy. That's the reason I late 12 minutes, but I'm here.
Okay.
I don't see any hands raised or comments from anybody in the audience.
Okay. Well, if there's no objections, take a vote. Did we lose Liz? I don't see her now.
Nope,
I'm
she's there.
here.
Oh, sorry.
I'm
There
at
you
the
are. I'm sorry.
top on mine.
You are on mine
Well,
too.
you were at the top until okay. Anyways, so if we can get a motion from for accepting with the two waivers.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the two waivers at 292 Main Street.
And I'll second
Second.
that. Okay. Second. All in favor, say aye. Andy Bakunowski, aye.
Liz Gephardt, aye.
Christy Burns, aye.
All
Thank
set.
you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
All right,
Okay.
thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we got. All right, John, we got one more minute, I
Yep.
think. And
Sit
then
tight,
we
John.
Yeah.
do the variance hearing for 50 Mirror Lake Ave. Okay, you're all set to go ahead and open that hearing.
Okay, 7:15, opening a public hearing for 50 Mirror Lake Avenue. This is a request for 4 variances, and in accordance with our preamble. A variance hearing from the Board of Health Regulations is called to order for 50 Mirror Lake Avenue. It is my duty to inform you that you will have to provide the Board of Health with data to support your request for a waiver of Board of Health requirements, and that if you do not receive the waiver, it will do you manifest injustice. You will have to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. And John, you have the floor.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So number one, I don't have that plan on this computer. If somebody has it and wants to put it up, that's fine, or else I can just explain the project to you. It's sort of fairly simple. 50 Mirror Lake Ave, obviously is on Mirror Lake Ave. It is not on the lake side of the lake. So we're not abutting, thanks, Betsy.
Yep.
We're not abutting the lake. We're on the other side of the street. But what we do have is a tiny lot. The lot actually is 3,403 square feet. And so we have sort of a butter issues. So to that extent, and as required by Title V regulations, I notified the three abutters that you can see on the plan, the one to the right, the one to the rear, and then that one that sort of just touches in the right rear corner. I also sent them full-size copies of the plans, and I also met with the abutter who's probably most affected by this property, which is Mike Sullivan, who's at 4 Pine Road, which is the property which is right behind 50 Mirror Lake Ave. So there is a failed cesspool at the back of this property. And I went out with a mat. We did soil testing. This water table this year, quite high this spring. Not able to do a perk test there. We did a sieve analysis. I bring it to Filch Engineering, which is a Boston engineering firm who does soil testing as part of their service to the community. I actually bring the samples down to Cranston, Rhode Island, where they have a lab. They do all of my testing. The reason I use them is they are headed by, their soil testing lab is headed by a professional engineer, and professional engineer reviews all of the information from the technician before it's sent to me. So this soil, which Matt and I kind of knew going in, came back as sands. So the DEP allows for a procedure where when you can't do a percolation test, right? And everyone knows what percolation test, right? We dig a hole in the ground, in the soil where we want to place the system, and we pour water in it and time how fast it goes away. So in lieu of that, we do a sieve analysis, a USDA, and so in this case, it comes back as sand. And then there's a little procedure laid out for the, what they call the long-term acceptance rate. Essentially, it tells us what the perk rate is, or should, or would be, if we were able to do a perk test. So in this case, we're essentially designing on 2 minutes an inch. And we knew that going in. I think it's Merrimack soil here, which is sand. So that's the first waiver we're asking for, is to allow the system to be designed and constructed without a perk test. So the other waivers have to do with the dimensional requirements to the lot lines. So we are where normally we have to be with our leach bed. We have to be 10 feet from the lot lines. We are 4 feet from the lot lines. And another thing in Title V says, I think it says if we're less than 5 feet to the lot lines, we need a registered land surveyor to stamp the plan. So 2 things here. The property that Mike Sullivan owns was surveyed not long ago. Mike might know exactly, but I think it might have been as late as 2020. There were monuments found. That was Bruce Wilson and Associates iron pipes at the 2 of the 4 corners on this property, a bolt marking a property corner across the street. So we found all of those, tied those in, and everything looks good. So we're confident with what we're showing you that we're going to be 4 feet from the lot line. But I do have a land surveyor, Andrew Murphy's worked for me for probably 30 years or so. He stamped the plan before he left to go skiing up north. So, so that's the second variance is we're asking for you to allow the leach field to be less than 10 feet, 4 feet from a property line. The other thing is we're asking you to allow the leach field to be less than 20 feet and actually 11 feet from a house foundation. But that's from the foundation of the 50 Mirror Lake Ave, not from the abutters foundations. So I did meet with, again, Mike Sullivan, who's the owner in the back. And I said, Mike, there's 2 ways we can do this. We can be, farther away from your lot line, but then we're going to be, because you can see the shape we used, we're going to be closer to your foundation. And I think we both agreed that it would be better to maintain at least 20 feet from Mike's foundation and be a little bit closer, the 4 feet to the lot line. So we are not closer to any abutters foundations than what Title V requires, but we are closer to the 50 Mirror Lake Ave foundation. And then the last waiver request is to allow the septic tank to be less than 10 feet to the foundation at 50 Mirror Lake Ave, and it's going to be 7.8 feet away. The reason for that is because we're trying to keep this leach field as far away from the abutters foundations as possible. We're simply going to have the septic tank a little bit closer so that there's more room for the leach field behind the building. So what this system is you're going to have it's a 2-bedroom house, but 1,500-gallon septic tank. That's the minimum allowed in Massachusetts by DEP Title V. So we've got a 1,500-gallon 2-compartment septic tank that will discharge to a 1,000-gallon pump chamber. And then that's going to pump up into a Presby system, which is, as you can see, we have a D box and then it splits it into those 2 sort of leach fields that kind of touch each other. And that's all allowed by Presby design. So unlike the hearing in front of you, we're not like a secondary treatment unit. This is just simply an alternative leach field. So it doesn't have the requirement of all of those testing and this and that. This is allowed by Title V for actually for not only for general use, but for this, which is for an upgrade to a system, remedial use. So we meet, other than the requirements that I'm asking the waivers for, we meet all the requirements of Title V. I would say that if you were going to put conditions, or I would suggest you put conditions, and one is that the septic tank be pumped out every other year. The other is that the area above the leach field be a well-maintained grass. We don't want any woody shrubs to grow over this. This system ends up, it's only like 4 inches below the finished grade. It's just the way it has to work. And that's what, the design is for Presby to have essentially 7 inches of cover over the pipe. So we don't want any woody shrubs. We don't want any trees. We don't want anything like that. We want grass to be over that. So I would suggest if you're going to put conditions, that those would be 2 good conditions to put on. And you might see we do have a retaining wall between this property and the property of Mike Sullivan, which is at the rear and also at the left of this property. His property L's around this property. So, manifest injustice if you don't do this. I mean, this is an existing house, it's occupied. If nobody's building anything, no one's adding anything, it's a failed cesspool. It needs to be fixed. This, in my estimation, is the best way to fix it. If we don't do this, then, the only other option would be a tight tank, which I think would kind of be a disaster. Just cost a lot of money to maintain that, to pump that out every month or whatever it takes. And that would sort of make the property sort of almost unusable, in the sense that it would cost too much money to maintain that property. So I believe that this is something that will be a great improvement, and it's a system that most likely will last 30 to 40 years without having to be replaced. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I can answer any questions that the board might have.
Any board members have any questions, or I can just turn it over to Matt and give his review of this? No? Okay, Matt, any comments?
I do. Certainly, between what Mr. Glass has said, and as you can see, it's an extremely difficult lot size-wise. Fortunately, we don't have wells to deal with this project, but just the size of the lot, it's certainly the best that can be done. As Mr. Glass has said, they have a failed cesspool right now. This property is now under an enforcement order that was issued back in February for that failed system. They did have breakout, so they do have 2 years to have the system replaced, which I think is the reason why we are here. So just to keep that in mind. I don't have any issues with the design as it's now proposed. We had a couple discussions back and forth between the abutters and Mr. Goss and myself. I had a few minor changes. There is a poly barrier that is proposed that extends well below the bottom of the SAS, that wraps not just around where the foundation wall is within the proximity to the SAS, but also that encompasses the abutters property as well. So, should there be any failure, the breakout will be surface, not lateral, as it is slightly raised with that, I think, foot or foot and a half block wall. So the neighbor's property is protected as best as possible, as is that foundation with those requests. Just based on the general use for the Presby, no garbage grinder. That's right in the approval. They'll have to have the deed notification recorded with the registry of deeds that an IA system has been installed. I'd also require a request to require a deed restriction for a maximum of 2 bedrooms. As Mr. Goss had said, I think I had also put in my letter, review letter, that the area above the SAS be properly loamed, seeded, and maintained to ensure continued stabilization. Proper routine pumping is needed, which would be every other year. And just given the extreme closest to the property lines for this entire project, just that the licensed land surveyor just verify the property lines and the property lines be marked out prior to construction starting. And I would strongly encourage a pre-construction meeting with whoever the installer may be for this project, and the engineer on site, just to reiterate all of the requirements. And I believe the last thing I had, just that the installer take all care possible as to not cause any unnecessary disturbance to the abutting properties. Again, it's an extremely difficult lot space-wise and size-wise, so I think it'll be a little difficult operation to get the system installed, but like I said, it is necessary given the failed cesspool. But as to projects proposed, I have no issues with this plan that's in front of us.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Mr. Sullivan, as you're in the butter, do you have any comments, concerns, observations, anything you want to say?
No, I think I'm all good. Thank you. Thank you for putting in like all those notes and working with us. We appreciate it.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
Any
actually, just
last comments?
I do have one last thing. Mr. Sullivan's septic has his tank and pump chamber in the back, and then there's a force main that goes up along the side of the property to the SAS that it is shown on the plan. That force main does come relatively close to the property line, which is another reason why I really want those property lines to be marked out prior to construction, so that way there's no issue that may be struck accidentally. So that's my only other comment.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that
Sure.
makes all the sense in the world, because the last thing we want to hear is that the installer ripped out Mike's force main, because it does his septic system, as you can see on the plan, his leach field is to the left, but you can see his septic tank and his pump chamber right behind this property. And as Matt said, his force main runs pretty close to the lot line. So good idea, have the lot line staked, that's good condition. And then the pre-construction meeting so that the installer knows, so both Matt and I can tell whoever it is to be careful. Go easy over there, because we don't want that. That's a mess.
John, can you put a beacon down that force main, either from the pump chamber side or the other side, to try and locate the pipe itself too? Is that doable?
I don't know if it'd have to come from the D box.
Okay.
You can put that in that, if possible. A good friend of mine, Tom Prout from Rentham, has a camera that I think he can slide down there, and then I think the camera has a little transponder and he
Yeah.
can mark it out.
Yeah, there's I mean, Ditch Witch makes one that literally size of a briefcase, and it has a
Yeah.
transponder and usually like a 50 to 100 foot tape.
So the only thing with that is Mike Sullivan would have to sort of let us on his property and let us open his D box, but that might not be the worst idea, because like I just said, breaking that force main, not that it's a huge deal, it can be repaired, but it's one solid pipe now. We'd like to leave it that way. So
Well, I think the way the weather's going to be for the next week or so, you probably have some time to talk with
Yeah.
Mr. Sullivan about getting access. So okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good. Okay. Any more questions from the board members?
I just have a question, and I guess it's not like specific to this, so I can ask it after, but it's just sort of in reference to this new system won't last forever either. And if there's not enough room for this, is this going to come to like anyone who's getting, or a lot of people who are getting septic systems now in 30 years? Is there going to be nowhere on their properties to build a new one if there's barely space now?
So,
So, do you want to?
yeah, sure. What will happen, and what's actually going to have to happen on for this project, is if there's no other location for the field to go, the existing field has to be completely removed all the way down to whatever contaminated soil there is. That all gets removed and taken off site, and clean Title V sand is put in its place. So currently the existing failed cesspool is actually somewhat in the middle of where this
Yeah, right in the middle of
field
leach
is.
field.
So that whole failed septic cesspool and all the contaminated material below and around it will have to be removed before this is put in. We actually had a little trouble when we were doing the perks. When we started digging, we just kept hitting more effluent and failed cesspool, so we had to shift over a little bit. So, but that's basically what will happen. It's not always the most ideal, but in a situation like this, that's what would happen.
Okay, thanks.
So Chrissy, just not to prolong this too much, and I don't sell Presby systems. I use them because they make sense in cases like this. But if Mr. Presby was on this Zoom call, what he would tell you is, so Presby kind of has these caps on the end. You can see them in the profile, which is right in the middle of the screen, those little circles. And what Presby would tell you is that when this system fails, all of those caps can be pulled out, and the bigger pipes, which are 12-inch, can be mucked out. In other words, some of the sludge sits in those pipes on purpose. And he says those can be mucked out. And so somebody's going to physically run, something through there to pull that gook out. And then you let the system dry up, weather permitting. If it's in the middle of a hot summer, it takes about a week. Other times it might take longer. And then they just simply put the system back together and it works again. Now, I've never actually seen that done, but I'm just telling you, the person who developed this system and, got this business running, it's been bought out now by another company, but that's what he would tell you. So there is the likelihood here that the system can be rehabilitated without a lot of work, and possibly not have to be completely dug out. But as Matt said, worst case is, they would come, dig it out, put it in a truck, take it to a landfill, get rid of it. Everything that's come in contact with sewage would be removed. Sand would be put back in the system, would be replaced. That would hopefully be about 40 years from today. So maybe there'd be other systems available at the time that would be better than this. But this is, so hopefully that didn't confuse everybody, but that's
No,
another.
it's my ignorance of I don't have a lot of
Yeah,
septic
well,
knowledge, so thank you for
yeah,
indulging my question.
you know all about them. And you don't want to know all about them. So,
Okay, if no further discussion of the board, we can get a motion to approve the 4 variances for 50 Mirror Lake Avenue.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 4 variances at 50 Mirror Lake Avenue.
Second,
Okay, and all in favor say aye. Andy Bakunowski, aye.
Liz Gephardt, aye.
Christy Burns, aye.
Okay,
all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you, John.
Okay, we'll see you.
okay. We have an appointment with Mr. Taylor.
I
Going to be
believe
talking about
he is.
radon in his Norfolk presentation. And Ryan, if you could, I guess, give a little bit of background on the project, how you came about to it, who you worked with, why you did this, what were you thinking? It's a common problem in Norfolk. I know that, but I'd be interested in hearing, what you were thinking, why you chose the project, and what's the next step. So you have the 4.
Oh, all right, great. Thank you. Well, so at King Philip, which is where I go for high school, senior year, you can do a project to graduate with a distinction in STEM. So I chose to research radon in Norfolk because I remember back when I live near Warren Drive, where the Fox Run development went in. And I remember they unearthed a lot of ground, and that caused a lot of high radon in our area. So our house had to get tested. So I wanted to go back and test some houses around Norfolk to see what the levels were. And I also wanted to create, a way for, Norfolk residents to get information about radon, because I didn't see anything on the Board of Health website. and I thought it'd just be a good way to like see what radon levels in Norfolk are because they're relatively high, and just some information on how you can prevent it in your own home. So I created this fact sheet, and I created an infographic, which is a little more digestible. It just has some facts about like what you can do to prevent radon in your home.
Okay, do you want to go over the data for the other board members, or have the board members looked at this presentation to see?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. So I did 5 tests around Norfolk. So yeah, if you scroll down the fact sheet, it should be there. And they were at-home tests, like the kind of tests you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's. They're not super expensive, about $15. And 3 out of the 5 houses that I tested had over the EPA's radon recommendations. So it's actually, if you go down a little more, it should be like a chart. But anyway, so the EPA, here you go. Here's the locations I tested. So the relative areas, and the locations E, D, and C were all higher than 4 PCIL, which is like the level of radon in the air in your home. So 3 out of the 5 locations had over the dangerous amount, and E and D had over double the amount. So I thought that would be really important to showcase. So if you scroll down a little bit more, there's like a chart. I made a just a little Excel sheet with some of the data. Yeah. And so the only house, so one of the houses produced a null result when I sent it to the lab. So I don't have the data for that house, but the other house, house B, which was the only finished basement out of all the houses that I tested, had a very low radon level. I'm not sure if this is because of the location or if it has anything to do with being a finished basement. However, I thought that was interesting to note because House C had a radon mitigation system, which is just a way of extracting radon from a specific area in your house. Usually it's just your basement. And it still produced a high level, but it had a relatively high level regardless. And locations D and E were unfinished basements that still had high levels. So I sent these tests to the lab, and what they sent back was essentially just um, a bunch of tips on how you can get rid of these. Most of them involve hiring a contractor, getting your houses tested regularly, and usually installing some sort of mitigation system.
Okay. Ryan, did you consider the age of the house in this assessment?
I did. Yes.
Which were the older houses and which were the newer houses?
Yeah. So house C is from the newer development. So that's a relatively new house. And so I considered that D and E were about 10 to 15 years older than house C, and house B was older than house C. So I thought that was interesting to note. One thing that the EPA and the CDC does note is that some mixes in the foundation of your home can have an effect on the radon levels. So when you're looking at a house that has a different mix of concrete, that can vary, like it doesn't necessarily have to do with the age of the home. It can just be related to something like the granite content or any materials that might allow something in the ground to leak into the house. I know one of the homes that had I think it had like 8.3 was what it returned. And on their foundation, you could see there was like smaller holes or cracks, which is a huge reason why a lot of radon leaks in. And that house was pretty old. I think it was constructed about like 50-ish years old. So
I know you didn't, I guess I know you didn't do water testing as well, but did that thought cross your mind of looking to see if they had, well, if obviously if they're on town water, they wouldn't necessarily have radon, but if they had their own private well, and then if that was tested, and also the air was that something that you thought about doing? I know the testing is fairly expensive, but was that
yeah.
was that a possibility in the terms of the study?
Yeah, actually, funnily enough, my original idea was to test the air in Norfolk. It was to do an air test. And I actually met with the development department. I met with Barry and Blair, and I got locations approved to test. And then I got to the point where I had to purchase the tests, and it was like $500, a test, and I needed to test different locations. So I realized that wasn't going to be affordable. I'm like the school wasn't going to be able to fund that. Um, so I was going to do a water test, and the water tests are they're less expensive, but they're also still less accessible than the air test. Like the test that I use is a charcoal test.
Yeah.
And they're super common. So I went with that. And also um I think I think 3 of the 5 houses that I had were on town water. So they would have all produced like the same result anyway. So that wouldn't have affected the study.
Okay. Any other board members have questions for Ryan?
No, this is great. It's a nice job.
Thank you. So basically, like, oh, so you also asked what are the next steps of this? So I have to present this to a board, like a panel, at the high school. So, basically, the next step is to try to get my project approved for the distinction, and hopefully they approve it.
Okay.
Good luck to you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Ryan.
you. Thanks, Ryan. And Betsy, we'll put this on the town's webpage.
Yeah, it's already up there.
Okay.
I posted a hard copy on the bulletin board as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, reviewing and approve meeting minutes from the February 27th, 2024 meeting. Did anybody, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't read them. I'm sorry. So I will defer to the other
I
two
did,
board
but it was at like
members.
6:45. So I don't know if I really got a pat on the back for that one.
I read them. I did not see any issues.
Me neither.
Okay. Okay, if there's no discussions, no changes to the meeting minutes, get a motion to approve them as
Make a
written.
motion to approve last meeting's minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Andy Bakunowski, aye.
Liz Kephart, aye.
Christy Burns, aye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. John's not with us tonight, so we can skip that unless anybody's got any questions.
No. Matt, any updates?
Not too much. We've actually been pretty busy in Norfolk with perks. And a few new construction things going on with some of the developments. They wanted to move some systems and like that, or perks that they had done one hole but hadn't finished and done both holes. Handful of repairs as they're coming in. A lot of plans now coming into for again a lot of new construction as the lots are being sold. But yeah, keeping busy for sure. But
Mhm.
nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary. I don't, as of right now, I don't have any other plans that I anticipate variances for, but that could change tomorrow. But for now, I think this was it.
Okay, now I guess just with all the wet conditions, I mean, are you seeing major problems with getting purchase done either correctly, effectively, efficiently? I mean, I just kind of view my side yard, which has a replicated wetland in it, and I mean it's a swimming pool, and we have ducks in there now, and the frogs and peepers are going nuts every night. And usually this time of year, it's sort of there's a little bit of water, but it's mostly like all the wetlands plants are coming up. So I'm just kind of curious what you're seeing around town. I mean, there's a couple places I've seen along 115 and some of the I'll call it the less traveled roads that there's a lot of water standing on the sides of the roads. And I mean, obviously I know the water table is high just because of all the rain we've had. So are you seeing problems?
Um, I've had a couple engineers change the date of some perks. Just, I mean, it's like if I were to try to go out and do a perk after last to a Wednesday night storm, it would be almost impossible just with high water.
Yeah.
And everything's still draining. So a little shuffling of some of the testing till the ground dries out a little bit. As far as getting the actual test done once we get out there, um, certainly we have the high groundwater season for a reason. And I will say most of the time in the last 2, 3 months where we see models is very, very close to where we're seeing actual water. And the redox, the models that we see, that's the historic high groundwater. The water reaches that point and deposits iron and then recedes. So that's what we look for. But to actually see water where it is now, I've been in this for over 16 years and I've never seen the groundwater this high. I know a lot of the engineers, they're saying the same thing too. So it confirms that, where we're seeing the groundwater is appropriate. It's making, I said, just trying to shuffle around these rain events to get the testing done has been a little inconvenient, I guess maybe, but we get it done.
Okay.
And same with the system installs. Well, the installers are just trying to work around, the predicted rains, so that way they don't get a system half built and then have to go and make changes or replace, pull out some sand or things like that. So just little proper planning at this point. But
Okay. Okay. No, it's because I know, I mean, my work is not the same as yours, but it's definitely there's been some inconveniences with the rain. So but anyways. Okay. 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 Thank you. Betsy, I saw the comment about the uh inspections by for underage smoking sales.
Oh, yeah,
Things went
yep,
okay, I guess, or
yep,
they couldn't do one.
they couldn't do them because I think the youth that they hired was familiar with the establishment, so
Okay. Okay.
yeah, so they did 4 out of the 5 establishments. Those 4 passed their inspections, so they did not sell to the youth, which is great.
Okay. 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 Moving on. So actually, I want to skip to Buckley and Man because that's going to be an easy one. Nothing's going on that I've heard of. I know that Rich had talked about a grant that may be available through the EPA for some little background history on that was the EPA actually went out because of the PCBs that were found, and they just kind of dropped it, said that it didn't rise to their level for do additional work. So I'm not quite sure which grant funding Rich has been talking about, but from the bigger picture of things, there's 3 awards that started back in late 22, early 23, totaling about $2 billion to date. And so the third round, I guess, is coming up now. So I guess we'll see if that's any money will come towards the town, towards Buckley and Man for any assistance or assessment. So Southwood, lots of stuff going on there. The consultants and GFI have asked for an extension for the phase 2 report till late this year, beginning of next year. A temporary, or not temporary, basically an interim report was submitted a little over a week ago to DEP, and I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't read everything. I kind of skimmed some of the areas. There was a conference call with them last week or so, and they identified areas of radioactive materials in soil associated with the filter beds. And they identified that some of that material would have to be removed because it exceeds standards. What's a little frustrating is they're not specifically stating what the standards are. And if you really want to get into the weeds with this, you can look at the various DEP, Department of Public Health standards, and you kind of have to pick and choose. The interesting thing about this particular project in this location is that the DEP has chosen to be the lead agency for the radioactive cleanup when normally something like this would actually be under Department of Public Health. So, so a little bit, it from the perspective of, I think, a structure and a functional way of doing this cleanup of the site, it makes sense because most of the work is actually under the authority, under the Department of Environmental Protection, and the radiation that they found in the filter beds, which is associated with the old cancer treatment, it makes sense. But again, DEP will readily admit, and if you want to read some interesting stuff, you can go to the DEP website and look for the site file under Southwood, and they'll explain, this is not their strong point, but they have people that can help them. So, so we're basically, things are getting pushed back in terms of remediation, or essentially, based on the original timeline that was submitted when they bought the property. They thought they'd be probably almost towards cleanup or starting cleanup next year, and I think that's going to probably get pushed back at least another year, maybe 2, given the timeline. So that's all I've got. But there's at least some activity, but it's not a heck of a lot that we can do anything about. We have to wait till the phase 2 report comes out, and we'll go from there once that happens. So okay. So moving on, I guess the next meeting schedules. We're looking at the 23rd.
April 23rd. I'm not sure if there's we have any board business. We might be able to push that off until May, but we can talk about that when the time comes.
Okay. Well, since I'm going to assume that since Matt's going to probably be affected by the rain this coming week, and it looks like end of next week is going to be rainy again too, based on the long range forecast. So it looks like things are going to keep getting pushed back. So we'll see what happens. Okay. Any comments from any other board members about just, I guess, being flexible about meeting times? I guess that's all we can do. We have nothing, no work on the agenda. I mean, we can push off a meeting if necessary. So.
Yeah, I'm traveling a lot in like the next couple of months for work, but I can certainly, I can always, if possible, dial in from wherever I am if I can.
Okay, well, we can circle back in a couple of weeks. I'm on vacation next week, so
Me too.
Oh, good.
Okay. Any anticipated business? Anything people want to bring up? Nothing? I have nothing either, so that's good. That's good. Okay. Well, if somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn,
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Does it need to be more formal than that? Are there
No,
official
that's fine.
languages?
and I'll
Second the motion.
just a second. So, okay, and all in favor say aye. Andy Bakunowski, aye.
Liz Gephardt, aye.
Christy Burns, aye.